Good evening. Welcome to this continuation of the May 27, 2015 School Committee meeting. Tonight is Tuesday, June 2nd, 2015. Please join the School Committee in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we begin tonight, I just want to explain the agenda. As some of you may recall, on May 27th, we started a meeting if we found it necessary to recess that meeting for purposes of executive session. So this meeting was to resume with the agenda items that we did not complete. I've since heard that there is interest in public input, that people are concerned that there was no public input on this agenda. While not legally required, I would like to give people the opportunity, if they so desire, if there's no objection from the school committee, an opportunity to provide some input. I'm going to allow 15 minutes for that, which time we'll have to evaluate if that's enough time or not. But we have a lot to get to, so I'd like to limit that to 15 minutes. The other thing is that if you have already addressed the school committee on a particular topic or issue, I would ask that you allow those that have not had an opportunity to speak to that issue to speak before the committee. So with that being said, it looks like we already have Mr. Spinelli here. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't do a roll call. My apologies. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7:03 p.m. and request a roll call first.
Mrs. Congdon? Mr. Lebo?
Present.
Dr. Page?
Present.
Mrs. Donovan?
Present.
Mrs. Quinney?
Present.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Present.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Present.
All present?
Thank you. So next we will have public input. Mr. Spinelli, please.
Good evening. My name is Larry Spinelli, 258 Lebanon Hill, taxpayer, former member of the town council, currently 30-plus year member of the Southbridge Planning Board. I normally don't do this, but I have followed this process with a great deal of interest. And I have made promises to members of my family that I would not get along and rant and rave and do anything else. I've been a member of the Planning Board for 30-plus years, and as the name of the board itself implies, its real function is to create the opportunity for planning good land use management. And I'm speaking about that because I'm concerned about what apparently is coming up with this vote tonight. Over the years, I have a number of grandchildren who are currently in the school system, and I follow with a great deal of interest what they say and what they come forward and what they tell me and how well they're doing. And fortunately for us, all of our children are honor rolls and doing quite well. So I know that the school system has the ability to educate. But I want to remind the board, first and foremost, I am opposed to restructuring at this point in time. I think it's the wrong thing to do. I think it's the opposite of what the Planning Board does. To create a new law, they take 2.5 to 3 years, and here this is being done, to me, with the impression that this is an 11th hour attempt to get something done that really is not what the focus should be. The school committee, all of you, are elected by an electorate. You are there to run a business. Your business is that of educating our children. The education of our children takes place with many facets: teachers, a facility, a structure, a concept. It succeeds only when you have all of these different positions managed properly, brought forward, and functioning properly. I had the opportunity to quietly go through one of the schools. I took a walk through it, and I think it's absolutely shameful what the school looks like, the damage that's been done, especially by young children. I mean, we're talking, I went through one of the elementaries a while ago, and you know, we're talking second, third, fourth, and fifth grade students, and actually, I went through there, and children were running amok. We had no discipline, and if we have no discipline, we have no integrity within the school system itself. And I was amazed to see how well some of my grandchildren do with what I hear from them is a lack of educational time because there's so many disruptions going on. And so I would ask the school committee, I can't speak eloquently enough to try and change your mind, but I can ask you to do this. All parts of a school system need to be administered equally. It's not just everyone on a school committee saying they are for the children. No, that's an absolute heresy. It's not just children. It's the schools' buildings themselves. It's the maintenance of those buildings. It's the curriculum. It's the enhancement of the teacher quality and support of the teacher. And it's holding parents accountable. And there seems to be something that's lacking. When we started out years and years ago, parents held their children accountable, and so did the teachers, and so did the school system. We don't do it now. If you want to discipline a student, I hear horror stories about children being sent down to a principal's office so that they can play on a computer or an iPad instead of because they were disruptive, where they go around taking pencils and stabbing other children, and just total disruption in a classroom. We don't do that. We don't need to change the personnel. We need to change our philosophy about our educational system. We need to support teachers. Yes, I'm biased. I have a teacher here, a child here in the system. I have children that teach in other systems and in other states. The same thing. You hear it no matter where you go. We need to hold parents of these disruptive children accountable. We need to start saying, this is an educational system, not a babysitting system, not anything else. Its focus is on education. And if you have children in that classroom that are not focused on this, then we have to do something about it. We have to work with parents. But we don't need to change administrators. If there is anything that should be coming out, if there is any positive thing that does as far as hiring, bring on another principal for the middle high school if that's what is needed. But don't make these radical changes that are going to affect everything else. It's the wrong time, it's the wrong appearance, it's the wrong thing to do. Start with the basics. Start holding children accountable. Start holding their parents accountable. We'll have a better educational system. I know no one is going to vote to agree with me, but I feel better speaking it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Hello, my name is Amelia Peliquin. I live at 275 Marcy Street here in Southbridge, and I am a parent of 2 children who are in the school district as well as a member of the town council. And I have chosen not to speak publicly about the restructuring plan until now because I really wanted to take my time to learn everything I could about it. I read through the document. I've spoken to a number of people. And I have to say, as a parent, I'm really not comfortable with the way this decision seems to be taking place. It seems like it was sort of rushed and not really thought out in terms of the future implications it's going to have in the coming year. And as a counselor, I'm really not happy with the move to restructure on a couple of levels. The first is that we had no mention of this during our EHS subcommittee's budget process, and I know that at this point you're being informed that the restructure would be budget neutral, but I believe that there's still a lot of really big unanswered questions in terms of unemployment costs that it would generate, as well as legal costs for the districts. So I don't believe that this restructure would be budget neutral. I think it would actually impact the budget in a negative way, and I think that we need to take more time to study this and make sure that we're making the right moves financially. And I'm going to stay out of all of the other details of that because I really just want that to be the focus of my comments. But I would urge you tonight to vote no on restructuring at this time. I think that we do need a second principal at the middle high school. I don't know that this time right now with this plan is exactly the way that you should be moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who has not addressed the school committee on this topic or has another topic that they wanted to bring up this evening?
Good evening. My name is Esteban Carrasco Jr., and I'm a resident of this community, 30 Woodland Street, also a town councilor, also a parent. I've been very vocal, and I continue to be very vocal, but I'm going to come up here and I just want to, first of all, just kind of direct my message to Ms. Donovan and Ms. McLaughlin. First of all, I want to say thank you for your years of service to our school district. We might not agree on all the decisions, or we might agree, but it takes time, effort, and a thick skin, and you've done that. Thank you. But I'm going to ask you both to abstain from any votes that are going to alter and change the direction of our school district for next year. I think you would be in a very tough position to make such a change, not knowing the outcomes that are going to be set before us later on. So again, I say thank you, but I would ask you respectfully to consider abstaining from any of the votes that were going to alter our school district moving forward, because I think it's not going to be an easy thing to do, but at the same time, it's going to be weight that you don't know the outcome. Unfortunately, if you were running for re-election, you would have the opportunity to change that outcome, but unfortunately, the choice has been made, and I thank you for your service, but I please ask you to abstain from anything that's going to change the district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Sean Moriarty, 44 Maggie Lane, and as a few of the previous speakers have noted, member of the council. I'm going to keep my piece just briefly. I wasn't expecting to have this opportunity, so just kind of jotted some things down on some paper here. As a product of the school system, as a resident and taxpayer here in town, as an elected official, as an educator elsewhere, and just as an individual with some common sense, I urge the school committee tonight to postpone any action on this whatsoever until after the NEAS self-study and the DSE study, both of which are coming up in just a few short months. We have a level 4 district here in Southbridge, and this is due in large part to the instability of the district, both administratively in the central office as well as in the school buildings. This restructuring job does nothing to address these concerns. If anything, it only propagates more of the instability. We have a very short amount of time between now and the start of the next school year, as hard as that may seem to believe, with just a few weeks, couple short weeks left in the school year currently. And the amount of time it takes to do this properly, to find qualified people so that at the 11th hour, we're not settling for somebody because we need to fill a position. I don't feel that we have that as an opportunity. I know I've spoken to a number of you about this, publicly, privately, and so forth, and I think if you wanted to add another principal to the middle school or the high school, I think that could be well done, but the overall plan, some of the combinations that are being proposed and the turnover and everything else that's going in with it, to me, is just not the right move at this time. And I would, again, just urge you to proceed with caution, to think about the unintended consequences, and to reconsider in terms of the timeline and the process, doing this after the NEASC and the DESE results are in this fall, so that you have ample time to put together a thorough plan that's budgeted for, that's funded, and that can be properly addressed and implemented to put you in a position to actually hire the people you need to hire if you need to make those hires. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hello, Susie Gears. I am staff of Southbridge High on medical leave, and I came down here because I turned the TV on and I'm frustrated. I have worked in music, film, publishing industries, and I've never been so happy to come home to Southbridge to teach in special education. There are leaders at that high school that I've never worked with that care so much for their students, care about their staff as much as I've worked with. And it's sad that in LA, I saw less drama than I do here in Southbridge. And right now, you have a staff that actually wants to be there. These people want to be in Southbridge. How many people do you here want to come to Southbridge, sadly? You have staff right here that want to be here, and you're trying to push them out. Mind-boggling. Mind-boggling to me. The morale is crap, but you have people that are out at every function, getting dunked, getting a pie in the face, and you're kind of swinging the door in their face by saying, we don't really want that. We haven't had that leadership in how long? Again, I just urge not to restructure. It's not personal, don't make it personal, but understand that you're gonna let some really great people wanna leave when they truly wanna be here, and that just makes me, as a resident and a staff member, pretty much just fed up. And I hope that you will make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Monique Manna, 20 Maple Street. I'm a resident and a town councilor. I come before you tonight to ask you not to go through with the restructure plan tonight. Although I do believe 2 principals are needed at the high school, middle school, that's the way it was supposed to be, I believe the way the process is going is not good for the community. Not good for the children either. Maybe about 2 meetings ago, when you first spoke on the superintendent search, and Chairwoman McLaughlin, you stated that our community needed stability before you could start the search process. And then a half hour later, Mrs. Stanton's up here talking about restructuring. There's no stability there. You're taking whatever stability that is left and disrupting it. Another thing that concerns me too is I was on the Spring, schoolspring.com, I believe it's called. And I searched Southbridge and for jobs for the school district. And there was a posting there for May 5th for a technical engineer. And in the overview section, it talked about the restructure of the administration. And this was posted on May 5th. Mrs. Stanton didn't bring anything to you until the 12th. I believe it was the 12th. That really concerns me. It should concern you all too. Thank you.
We're about at our time limit, so Mrs. Cognesi, you're welcome to speak, and then I'd like to wrap this up. Thank you.
My name's Terry Cognesi. I live at 122 Denison Hill Road. Had kids go through the system, been involved with the system, the whole shebang. What I wanted to talk to you about just a little bit tonight is what makes other businesses great. And a lot of it has to do with longevity of employees and service to the businesses that they're in. When my kids were in school, we had principals like Mr. Paracchio, who'd been there forever. We had everyone was there for a long time. The teachers were there for a long time. We got to the point where it's like, okay, so Mrs. Kaleza was really tough. That's where you wanted your kids to go because you wanted them to get grounded in a good education. We don't have that anymore. The administrations change all the time, and when we finally get a really good principal like we had at West Street a year ago, they're gone, they move. I mean, granted, he had a relocation issue, but they don't stay, and the same with the teachers. And this, to me, by not restructuring at this point in time, other than perhaps hiring a middle school principal, would give the system time to take that deep breath and start building that base of longevity, especially for the people who really want to do well and really care about the kids in the system. So I'm just asking you to please consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to school committee actions. This is agenda item number 8A. This would be a vote to approve the superintendent's proposed restructure of the central office, Southbridge Middle High School.
Madam Chair, I object to consideration of the question as I believe it poses a detrimental effect on the organization.
Thank you.
Can I continue to give my reasons why?
On the vote, I would prefer to have a motion and a second and then open discussion.
I object to consideration of the question because I think there are serious issues that we need to consider.
I think we can consider them upon discussion. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Dr. Page?
Yes, the reason for my objection to consideration is that the creation of agenda item 8A, which involves the restructuring of the middle high school building, in my review of the proposal and reading through our policies, it seems to me that it involved several policy violations as well as the fact that specific financial details that are sufficient to evaluate its feasibility have not been provided. Further, previous debate and public hearings have resulted in effectively a public evaluation of the job performance of several school employees beyond the purview of the school committee, and it's my opinion that continued debate over this topic is likely to invoke the same. Specifically, policy BDFA states, it's school councils. Within the policy, it states the school committee believes that the school is the key unit for educational improvement and change, and that successful school improvement is best accomplished through school-based decision-making process. Involving those directly affected by any action or decision of the school council helps to strengthen the commitment of such decisions by those affected. This proposal has not been reviewed by the school council, nor the result of which has been communicated to the school committee. In addition, policy CE, which is administrative councils, cabinets, and committees. The superintendent will establish councils, cabinets, and committees deemed necessary for assuring staff participation in decision-making. There is no evidence that any members of the school committee were involved in this proposal or its structure apart from the current acting superintendent and assistant superintendent. The acting superintendent has not provided the specific line item details associated with implementation of this proposal that it permits the body to dutifully consider its merit, talking about the financial line item details. According to another policy, I don't have the number with me or the letter designation, but it is that we are to have our full line item budget voted by June 15th of this year. As such, the restructure proposal if the restructure proposal is passed, there will be insufficient time to evaluate and provide input regarding its impact on specific line items, especially those related to student, academic, and support services. The mechanism and structure of the proposal itself with respect to the disposition of affected personnel has resulted in a de facto public evaluation of their job performance. Again, that I think is categorically wrong, and I really don't wish to continue along those lines in this forum. And I seriously would like to consider that this question, I think it poses an undue risk of unpredictable harm to the organization, and I really think it should be removed from the docket. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak to this agenda item? Any other school committee member like to speak to the agenda item?
My question is, was that a motion?
Was that a motion to remove the item from the docket?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
So we have a motion from Dr. Page and a second from Mr. Olivo to remove the item from the docket. Can I will request a roll call for that, please.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mrs. Donovan?
No.
Mrs. Quinney?
No.
Mr. Abrahamson?
No.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
No.
We have 4 no and 3 yes.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion on the main item on the agenda, or the question, 8A? Mrs. Congdon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is also, since the report was given to us, my first time to ask questions regarding the restructure proposal, so I do have many questions. My first question is through you to the superintendent. It is my understanding that there are 4 types of restructure plans as specified by the No Child Left Behind law. What type of restructure is this?
This is a total school restructure to create 2 new schools with 2 separate administrative structures to support instructional improvement in the schools.
So this would be the reconstitution, because there's the restructure that where the state comes in, the private management, the charter, and the reconstitution.
I believe you're referring to a reconstitution, but I would have to check.
Okay. So would it be my understanding that we're not going on the 4 types of restructure?
So I guess I'm confused by your question.
What type of restructure is this?
So this is a restructure plan to address the needs that have come out of the Schoolworks report, the quality review report from the AIP, and has been done to restructure the administration, also instructional supports to staff in terms of creating new IRS positions in both schools. So we are looking at a restructure of the 1 school into 2 schools.
My next question would be, how will this restructure affect our student test scores?
So at this point, like when the schools came together, those AYP scores were brought into 1 school. At this point, we have not moved forward with how the MCAS scores would be disaggregated because we have not applied to the state yet because we do not have approval.
How will this restructure align with our AIP?
So right now, we are in review of the AIP and revision of the AIP. At this point, we are moving forward as if the school is still Southbridge Middle High School, and should the decision be made to have 2 separate structures, then there would be a set of goals that would be developed through the school improvement plan that would align with the overall district goals in the AIP.
So we'd be changing our AIP with the restructure?
Not really. The AIP would be the district goals for student outcomes and staff outcomes, educator outcomes. What really changes is the school improvement plan. So the middle school, if it were created, would create its own school improvement plan that aligned to the district AIP.
So they would be changing the one that they're currently working on?
Well,
they're currently going through? They'll have to change their school improvement plan?
Correct. But that's a revision process that takes place every year.
True, but it would be a big revision.
Not necessarily, because the AIP review this year has reduced the number of objectives. If it's approved by the state, we're going to 3 objectives. So all of the schools will be conducting the same revision of their school improvement plans, which is an annual process for them.
And how will this restructure, stability was a big goal of the school committee, but how will this restructure promote stability in our school district?
Sure. So I think that a lot of the discussion we're hearing is that there's no argument that 2 principals is a desire. That it does support the change that we would like to see in terms of supporting both the discipline climate in the school, also supporting staff as they are changing instructional practices. So, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
How will this restructure promote stability
Okay.
in our school
So,
district?
by adding the IRS positions, I believe that it promotes the stability of support to staff, and by answering the question and the call from staff to have support of a principal at the middle school level, that in fact does provide stability to the middle school, which is not currently there.
But we'll be taking the existing stability that we have right now and changing it.
That's one opinion, yes.
My next question was, I know that we took into account the quarterly reports, the school works reports, the school review, and the survey of the staff. My question is, because I know the answer to the staff survey, but how many students were interviewed in the school works report? I didn't see that.
I believe there were 2 groups of students that were interviewed. If you give me a minute, I can look. The details aren't in the report as written. I would have to go back and review the entire process. It's my recollection, although I don't want that to be in the record as gospel, it's my recollection that at least 2 student groups were interviewed, and they were interviewed by multiple people from the School Works report. I would have to go back and revisit the schedule.
My only concern with that would be that students are the big stakeholder in this entire restructuring plan, and I just wanted to make sure that they had a voice in this plan itself.
Would my colleague allow me just to clarify, because I do remember that?
Sure.
What happened was it was disrupted by a bomb scare. That's what they were doing at the time. They were doing this so that they had to do it at another time because of the bomb scare at the school.
So the students were interviewed at a different time?
Students were interviewed at a different, yes.
So Schoolworks takes very seriously student insight into their school, and that was part of the process and was scheduled, and those did occur.
In reference to what Dr. Page had mentioned, was the school council consulted in the Schoolworks report?
Not that I'm aware of specifically, but there are certainly people that were interviewed, staff that were interviewed, administrators that were interviewed throughout the process.
I know the school committee, I know I was not allowed to be a part of that because of, I was working and we were only given a couple of days' notice. But do we remember how many school committee members were interviewed for that Schoolworks report?
I was.
4. How many school committee members were interviewed for the Schoolworks report?
Yes, I was. Yes, I was.
So 3?
4.
4. Oh, I didn't know who else.
I think everybody else was working.
Okay. My other concern regarding the reports was that the reports didn't take, and correct me if I'm wrong, didn't take into account that the middle school, high school was short-staffed from the last year as well as this year, with many resources being stripped away. My concern was that the reports didn't take that into account, since initially the plan that was put in place was for 1 principal and 3 assistant principals, and that plan really has never been implemented with a full complement of staff. The previous principals were placed on leave or shifted to various positions, with assistant principals taking over the role. We lacked in guidance staff, and there was a lack of leadership from the acting superintendent at the time in the building, and then the transition of the superintendent, resulting in 4 superintendents since January of 2010. So I'm just questioning the data in these reports. My question is, where is there evidence from DESE supporting the idea of the restructure and the quarterly reports, especially in January through March?
It's my understanding that in conversations that I've had with Assistant Commissioner Russell Johnston, that they do leave those decisions to the school department. They favor school districts that take an active role in addressing concerns at the building level, and they support those decisions through their DSAC organization, through their mentoring of superintendents, and also through their plan monitor and plan manager program.
So in their quarterly reports, correct me if I'm wrong, I didn't see any support saying that the middle school, high school should be restructured according to any of the quarterly reports.
So the AIP is not a process where they will make recommendations. What they will scour is the data, and they will highlight, as is the title of the meetings, the highlight meetings, areas that continue to be a concern that are not addressed with the current structures, or they will address what they are seeing in terms of improvement, but also areas that need to be improved. So they are not an organization that is going to come out and make a recommendation for changes that need to occur. They feel that that is the purview of the school department and central office, and work in collaboration with the instructional leadership teams at the schools, because empowered decision-making starts in the schools, and it's important that, that the state doesn't take a role in those local decisions.
Another concern I had were that 2 other main focus groups that have been and continue to be under-supported in our district are ELL and special education students. How will this restructure plan at the middle school, high school address the needs of these students?
So specific to those students, what we are looking to do is, with the IRS positions, support all of our staff as they incorporate SEI strategies into inclusion classrooms. So providing extra coaching through those IRS positions is critical. Also, with an additional principal, ensuring that the structures are in place for our ELL and our special education students. Ensuring that there is oversight and management of instructional programming, I think, is key. I think that there's been a discussion about the overwhelming nature of one principal and the multiple programs in the school, and the high needs of students that we have. And so the second principal is a way to help address those issues.
But not in regards to direct learning, just kind of overseeing.
No, I think the principal's job is to oversee direct learning, so to provide support and oversight to teachers as they're working with students. I think the best instructional leaders are in classrooms, providing that feedback to staff. It's part of our AIP, and when we have, as has been noted, time, which is trying to be split between 2 buildings or 2 very unique needs, I think that there is a recognition that the principal's work is stretched thin.
How would the plan address the needs to provide a more supportive environment for the social emotional behavior students?
So again, with the addition of the principals working at their specific levels to create the supports and programs, particularly to the middle school, the addition of the adjustment counselor provides support to these specialized programs and students who may not fall under the umbrella of special education, but may be demonstrating problematic behaviors. I think it's important to understand that I have said all along that some of these decisions do need to be left to the building principal, and that while the position may be created as an adjustment counselor, in reviewing the data, principals may decide that that position may be used more effectively as something like a behavioral intervention coach. But really, the flexibility needs to be there for principals to work with their instructional leadership teams to make those decisions as they analyze data.
I know my next question, thank you, is the budget impacts. And I know we talked about it last night, and you did answer the questions regarding the various salaries. And I think we still had more questions regarding that. But my concern is the salary for the principal was listed under 100,000 that we were kind of considering. Was that the number? And I know I brought this up last night, but when Webster pays for a year 2 principal and we were looking for 3 years of experience, I know you said it wasn't a year 2 or 3, but more experience in an underperforming district. I just kind of pulled the numbers, and Webster pays for a principal of a high school with 2 years experience, $118,976. In the middle school principal, they pay $111,670 for a year 3 principal. In Oxford, for a year 1, pays about $105, and middle school is $99,694 for a middle school year 9. I just think that our numbers should be a little bit higher, and that is a concern budget-wise for me. North Brookfield had an enrollment of 538 students. We have an enrollment of 2,275 students, and North Brookfield pays for their principal $98,450. So I just think we're not looking at our budget numbers, and with budget season and how much needs to be cut, I'm very concerned that within 3 weeks we really haven't looked into this in great detail. The other question and concern I had was the assistant principal athletic director position. In the past, we've tried that. It seemed not to work, but it's being proposed again. I don't know why we would do something that hasn't worked in the past. The other concern I had was the position reduction of the academic dean at Charlton Street, West Street. Actually, correct me if I'm wrong, this position was never budgeted to begin with. So that in the budget structure proposal was on there, but initially it was never budgeted. But now we're going to budget it. The budget impacts I do perceive to be more than initially stated in regards to potential litigation, grievances. Also, what we didn't consider was search and travel for site visits to interview new staff, new principal training and certificates, athletic training. I do believe that this will set the district back more than $134,671 of that variance, and I just believe that we're setting ourselves up for next year to be way over budget before we even open the doors. Research of restructure plans, for example, from the American Institute of Research, have a restructuring roadmap with a breakdown of steps to implementing a successful and well-thought-out restructure. And I happened to look at that, and the timelines give starting the restructure proposal at about 18 months for the start of that, for the implementation. For that restructure roadmap, there's different steps. And what works when, taking charge of change, big change, 15 to 18 months before restructured school would begin. Step 2, choosing the right changes, 12 to 15 months before restructured school begins. Step 3, implementing the plan, 9 to 12 months before restructured school begins and throughout implementation. Step 4, evaluating, improving, and acting on results, 9 months after the restructured school begins. I think this is a great tool. It's from the Learning Point Associates, which is a research group, a guide for education leaders. It was published June of 2010. And looking at that report, I think it's a very well thought out plan.
Would my colleague just answer a question? Does it say anything about administration and
restructuring in that way, or is it just talk about the building?
It talks about organizing the district team, assessing the team, making a plan for all stakeholders, analyzing school failure, which would include the team, making final restructure decisions, district teams, school teams, and other stakeholders, district lead partners, school teams, and school leaders. It takes all of it into account. And I'd be happy to share that information with everyone.
Thank you.
My last comment was regarding the community. I've had a lot of outrage from the community, calls and conversations. I've entertained many, and it's been overwhelming against the rushed plan of restructure. I apologize to the staff, students, and members of our community that the school committee has allowed the superintendent to rush this decision and not take into account our own policies. I am elected to represent my constituents, and I will not be supporting this plan. I am in favor of two principals, one at the middle school and one at the high school. I am in favor of restructuring the job descriptions in Department of ISS to better serve the needs of our students. However, the way this plan is presented is rushed, not well researched, and lacks solid, valid evidence. In researching restructure plans, researchers urge districts to refrain from relying on restructuring sanctions to affect school improvement. They have produced negative byproducts without yielding systemic positive effects. I am in favor of stabilizing the district and thought that after the school committee voted to give Ms. Stanton a one-year deal, they wanted stabilization. Then within minutes after the vote, we're giving a presentation to restructure the middle school, high school. How does this provide stability to a school that has had over 5 principals overseeing the school in the past 3 years? These rash decisions by the superintendent have divided a community when we all should be using our energy to rebuild a broken system. Trust has been lost. And who suffers when these adults can't work together? But the children of this community. I am frustrated, and I have lost confidence in this board I am elected to sit on. I am urging my fellow members to do the right thing and vote no on this proposal. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, settle down. Please settle down. Please settle down. Please settle down. Thank you. Appreciate your enthusiasm. Okay, anybody else on the school committee like to speak? Mr. Olivo.
I am very frustrated at how the division of this town has come about because of the expeditious manner in which this restructure has been proposed. I don't think that that is any question for anybody. I know that it was presented. I would like to reference GCA as one of our policies tonight. And that policy states all professional staff positions in the school system will be created initially by the school committee to support a budget that provides sufficient number of positions to accomplish the school system's goals and objectives. Although such positions may remain temporarily unfilled, only the committee may abolish a position it has created. Each time a new position is established by the committee, the superintendent will present for the committee approval a job description for the positions, which specifies the job holder's qualifications and the job performance responsibilities. The superintendent will maintain a comprehensive set of job descriptions for all positions. That was adopted March 2008. Now, this proposal came to us May 12th, and we had no job descriptions, nor had any of us on this school committee ever heard of this restructure. And you can ask anybody up here, and if they say yes, then they're lying. And if they did hear about it, they didn't share it. So I ask you, when you proposed this, Ms. Stanton, why did we not have job descriptions? Why were we not made aware that this was something that was in the works?
Are you asking about the timeline?
No, I'm asking, when you propose this with the jobs that would be eliminated and filled, why did we not have job descriptions for those positions that you said would need to be filled?
So it was my understanding that I presented my opinion and what I feel is a well-researched and a deliberate attempt to address consistent, persistent data that is problematic coming out of the Southbridge Middle High School. And while I understand it is difficult to hear, it is something that we needed to address. In addressing that, I broached the school committee and suggested that I would like to investigate the restructure into the two separate schools. As a result of that initial conversation, the question was asked, can we have more information? And I agreed. I had asked originally so that I would have the opportunity to speak with staff who this potential restructure may affect, and I wanted to do that in person. I did not want that to be done in public, and I apologize to those people that, in fact, it did happen to, because part of the proposal was done in public session. So your questions, I believe I've answered. Some of the job descriptions were in existence but needed to be updated. So I have provided you with the information that you've asked for.
We were provided with that information 2 weeks later, May 27th to be exact, which to me doesn't seem like this was ready to be prepared. This seems like all these things were written, all these things were printed and produced for us. I don't think that it was created. I don't think that these personnel that were the personnel that was contacted should have been contacted without the vote of the school committee. It was talked about, but these people were contacted, and I don't think that these people should have been contacted without the proper vote. I understand that that you oversee them in their jobs. However, when you start to take that upon yourself because you either heard or did not hear that, yes, we would like a restructure, because I think that that is an agreement with everybody. Not necessarily a restructure, but a separation of schools. That was designed for a separation of schools. We have a stable staff in place for the high school. If we are going to move on this, then we need to move for the middle school side. This was not none of the job descriptions, none of this was proposed at that first time. And then between there, I'm sorry, I'm frustrated and I'm trying to get this out. In between there, personnel were contacted, and that puts everybody on edge. This town is separated. However, I have not seen such support and unity in this town in a long time. These seats are filled tonight, if you cannot see that, in support of what is going on at that high school. So if we are going to move on this, then we move to hire a middle school principal and fix that side. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to comment on Mrs. Quinney?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think one thing that we need to be clear on is that it is not the purview of the school committee whatsoever at all, personnel other than that of the superintendent. That is within, all this personnel stuff is within her role in her office as superintendent. I know that the community is divided, and I understand that, and I'm certain that not everybody's going to agree, and people have made up their minds based on a variety of different information, and I think that it would only be fair to share with the community the information and the facts that we have before us in this restructure proposal. So the quality school review, which took place at the middle high school, was brought about by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to assess the SQR, School Quality Review. Its goal is to help districts and schools understand where such efforts are successful or lagging, as well as how future plans can be improved. They utilize 6 essential conditions for school effectiveness: effective school leadership, aligned curriculum, effective instruction, student assessment, tiered instruction and adequate learning time, and student social, emotional, and health needs. And I will be the first person to say that not everything in here is bad, and wonderful things are going on. We heard from from some students about their positive experiences, and from parents about their children's positive experiences. And the effort, I don't think that where we're at is due to lack of effort or a desire to do the work. I think that the work is overwhelming at this time. The essential condition of effective school leadership, in the report it states that school leaders are working to establish a focus on instruction and improve instructional practices. I think that that's a positive thing. Within that, it also says that teachers and school leaders reported that school leaders have a range of responsibilities, and that some of these responsibilities have limited their availability to provide instructional support. Similarly, school leaders reported that the principal and assistant principals aim to observe instruction frequently. However, other responsibilities such as managing discipline, mediating student conflicts, etc., sometimes limit their ability to do so. Teachers reported although school leaders visit classrooms, the frequency and quality of instruction varies. I don't think that that is because people are choosing not to do that. I think it's because the work is overwhelming, and I commend the efforts that are taking place. And it talks about some positive feedback that teachers were given that improved their practice. The school, under aligned curriculum, the school is working to complete the process of developing curriculum maps aligned to state frameworks, and there are some structures in place that help teachers use those maps. So I think that's great work. It's a work in progress. The ELA and math are almost complete according to the report, and there's more work to be done, and that is no easy task. And again, I think that's a positive thing that came out of that. Feedback on lesson plans, and I think this is also due to non-dedicated staff and staff being pulled in a multitude of directions. Some staff get feedback once every 2 weeks, and then some others get it once or twice this year. Again, I don't think that that's because of lack of effort or care. I think when you have so much on your plate, it is hard to get everything done to the best that it needs to be done. Effective instruction. Schoolwork states that instruction is not rigorous and does not meet the needs of all students. Instruction does not promote higher order thinking, and the observed clear evidence of teachers activating higher order thinking skills was observed in 8% of lessons, partial evidence of teachers activating such skills in 15% of observed lessons, and no evidence of teachers activating such skills in 77% of observed lessons. In several observed lessons, students worked on basic single-step tasks that did not require higher order thinking. The core instruction does not consistently incorporate a variety of strategies and resources to meet students' diverse learning needs. The site team observed clear evidence of teachers using a variety of instructional strategies, groupings, and room arrangements to promote student acquisition of the learning objective in 15% of observed lessons, partial evidence of such strategies, groupings, and room arrangements in 35% of observed lessons, and no evidence of such strategies, groupings, and room arrangements in 50% of observed lessons. Several lessons in which students worked independently to complete worksheets, as well as several other lessons in which teachers provided whole class instructions while students simply listened and observed. Most lessons were not differentiated to meet student needs.
The site team observed clear evidence of teachers scaffolding their instruction to meet the needs of all learners in 12% of observed lessons, partial evidence of such scaffolding in 12% of observed lessons, and no evidence of scaffolding in 77% of observed lessons. So I think that speaks to some kids are really getting tremendous instruction in some of the classrooms, and all those things are taking place, but that's not true for every classroom, for every student. And given that we're here to represent all the students, that data is concerning to me. Regarding student assessment, we use a variety of student assessments, and the school is developing assessments and beginning to use assessment data to inform instruction. It talks about ANET, DDMs, quarterly ELA, and math assessments. That the quarterly assessments were created by teachers. The QPR speaks to the evidence of how students have done on those. And I think this is another work in progress. One of the challenges that was outlined was teachers did not use checks for understanding to monitor student progress, inform instruction, or provide feedback. The site team also did not observe the use of thumb tools or other strategies to check understanding of all students. Teachers were circulating throughout the classrooms in many classrooms, but typically were doing so to monitor student behavior and/or ensuring that students were on task rather than assessing students' understanding. That it talks, as our quarterly report that we've already been over many times, discussed reteaching and how reteaching positively impacted some classes, but not all of them. Under tiered instruction and adequate learning time, it says, academic supports do not meet the needs of all students. The school lacks flexible tiers of research-based interventions to meet the needs of all students. It discusses E-block and how kids are placed in E-block at the middle school based on ANET or MCAS, and then they are not transitioned out of that if they do not still have that need. Supports for English language learners do not meet student needs. It talks about the challenges with our limited ELL teachers. Supports for students enrolled in special education do not consistently meet student needs. It talks about a co-teaching model and that frequently special education staff are principally utilized in helping with discipline and student behavior. Both teachers and school leaders reported that instructional staff lack a shared commitment to students enrolled in special education and that some general education staff do not take responsibility for students enrolled in special education. I think that speaks to behavior issues that we have and needs for discipline. Under student social, emotional, and health needs, the report states that the school does not provide a supportive environment for all students. And again, I think some kids are having a tremendous experience, and I wish that every student was having the same experience. The school lacks a predictable environment that supports all students' learning and an effective approach to behavior management. The school leaders stated that they have identified approximately 20 middle school and 30 high school students who are responsible for much of the behavior and discipline challenges. I think we've heard that consistently throughout the year. However, they explained that the school lacks clear, effective strategies to manage and support these students. Finally, teachers and school leaders reported that school has 2 in-school suspension rooms, but acknowledged that these spaces could be used more effectively to meet the needs of the students. Teachers explained that ISS rooms are not supportive environments in which students can get academic or social emotional help. The school has some social emotional supports, however, these do not effectively meet the needs of all students. So, based on those facts in this report and observations, I think it's clear that we need instructional resource specialists dedicated at both the middle school and the high school level in ELA and math to support education, to improve instruction and scaffolding and support teachers who are doing it. Differentiation is a hard thing to do. And without the support, I don't think it's fair to expect staff to be able to perform at the level that the state expects them to. I also think it's been stated repeatedly that the middle school and the high school should be separated and that we need principals at each. I think regarding social, emotional, and discipline issues, having ISS teachers to deliver social, emotional, and behavioral curriculum and support is clearly a need, as well as an adjustment counselor to identify students who need and getting them access to community resources. I think the job descriptions we have clearly delineate roles and responsibilities to each of those things. I think splitting I know for half a year we had an assistant principal who was also the athletic director, maybe it was the full year. And that didn't go necessarily well, and I think that wasn't a position that was advertised and filled. It was an appointment, and I think when you have appointments, things don't necessarily go all that well, and you don't get the best candidates. But I think we've heard repeatedly that we need teachers in front of kids, in front of classrooms, and we had to, earlier in the year, add a PE teacher. So having our PE teachers in front of kids so classes aren't overcrowded and keeping kids safe, I think that that's a great idea. So I think the Schoolworks report identifies needs that we have in the district, also talks about the good things that are at the school, talks about the good things that are happening, and I think we need to support those better and provide the resources that teachers need and students need in order to be successful. And I think that this restructure plan meets those needs as they are, and I think knowing these needs and doing nothing is not helpful. I've heard people talk about the future suffering that this is going to cause students. And it could. It absolutely positively could. But I think this report clearly states that students are suffering now, and to not do anything for a known needs to happen in order to move the district forward. So that's, based on the data, I think the restructure plan meets the needs of the school at this time.
Thank you.
That is all.
Madam Chair?
Yes. I just want to see if anybody else who hasn't spoken yet, Dr. Page, either Mr. Abrahamson and Mrs. Donovan. Do you have anything, Mrs. Donovan?
I had a couple questions. Did you have something?
No.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Ms. Stanton. One of the questions that I have been struggling with, and I've had numerous conversations with, like Mrs. Congdon, people in the community about, and one of the general themes, and we saw it here tonight as well as at our public forum, and I think that there is obvious support that they realize that the role of a single principal at that middle high school is a daunting task, and yes, we have many that have gone in there, and there's been no doubt that all of them have struggled, to no fault of their own, but just the nature of what it is struggling, and it's daunting. And so, therefore, I think people do recognize that while there is the structure there for one, I think that even for me, because everybody knows that when I came on board July 2012, one of the first things that faced me as a new school committee member was to vote on the structure of the new middle high school. There was nothing to go by other than once upon a time we had a separate middle high school and we had a separate high school. This was a new building, and at that time, I was presented with information by the superintendent at that time with evidence and data that he felt was relevant to his support of one principal in that building. I, at that time, voted to support that. He was the professional. The information that I was given was informative enough for me to make an informative decision. I can honestly tell you that when this restructure proposal came through from Ms. Stanton, there was a whole packet in there relative to the Massachusetts School Board Association or the School Board Authority. And there were absolutely people, prior school committee members, who went through that process and knew exactly how all that went down. I was never given that. So when I read this time, well, yeah, maybe if I was given that at that time, maybe I would have voted differently at that time. But, you know, it's done, it's done. We're here today. And what I was trying to say is that I think that everybody here will not deny the fact that at this point in time where we are all at, where our kids are at, where that building is at, there is the need for the two-principal model. The status quo cannot remain the same for the kids in that building. Mrs. Quinney talked about many, many statistics that support that. We all have read DESE's reports, and why Mrs. Congdon is absolutely correct, and they did not provide a recommendation for a restructure in those words. Nobody with a brain in their head can understand and realize and accept the data as what we need to maintain. It's an atrocity the way many of our students are failing up there. It is a tale of two cities in that building. While we have kids that are doing very well, we do have other kids that are suffering. And we have to think of those two kids. We have to think of all of those kids and what's best for all of them. And to do nothing helps nobody. So my question to Ms. Stanton is, even Mr. Olivo had brought it up, you know, people talking about the separation of schools versus the restructure. People looking for supporting existing administration and adding a new principal for the middle school side. And based on what I've read, based on what questions I have asked, I don't know if that's possible. It seems like many of us want to walk through the cafeteria line and pick this and this and this and this because we like this part of the proposal and we like that part of the proposal, but we don't like that part of the proposal or that part of the proposal. And I don't see this proposal as a la carte. We can't choose what we like and what we don't like. So I'm asking you, is there no way to satisfy both supporting an existing administration and adding a middle school principal, or is it all or not?
So the discussion about the process of how to restructure the school was vetted through legal counsel. That was a step to, I think, mitigate the risk associated with both legal costs that may be associated with a restructure and also the unemployment costs. So the discussion was, how do we restructure in a way that is fair and equitable, that mitigates legal and mitigates our unemployment costs? So in discussion with council and looking at other districts and their restructures, because the school is eliminated and Southbridge Middle High School no longer exists, the contractual positions no longer exist. So those positions, to Mr. Levo's point, have to be redeveloped, job descriptions rewritten or revised, and then the process for people to apply for those positions so that teachers and students and parents and council members can, school committee members can be on the committees to go through the process of interviewing and making recommendations for principals to be placed.
Okay.
Madam Chair, through you, Madam Chair, may I follow up on that? Is the latter part of what you said really a legal requirement?
It is
that you
from
have
council.
to really post?
It is the directive.
I would like to see that in writing, please, that that's an absolute requirement from legal counsel, because I don't believe that that's the case. You can create a job, you can terminate a job and create a job in one stroke of the pen at the same time, unless your intention is to remove people. With all due respect, Madam Chair, I really cannot see any possibility as to why that protracted, long drawn-out process of terminating positions, creating new ones, searching, interviewing, all of that kind of stuff has any benefit whatsoever to this district from a budgetary perspective, from an academic perspective, from a moral perspective, and potentially from a legal perspective.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Mr. Olivo?
To what Ms. Stanton said, and having these principals relieved and reapply and vetted by the community. These people have already been vetted by the community. The community spoke, and these people were hired for those positions. So to get rid of it, it doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem moral. Instead of supporting the people that we have there and helping them with all the stuff that Ms. Quinney, all the statistics that Ms. Quinney stated, instead of supporting them, because they need help. But we're going to just say, you know what, we're all done. You can come back and reapply. Now the job descriptions are so that maybe they don't qualify for these positions. And that brings question as to, are we really trying to get rid of people or are we not? I say that we need to support these people. We need to support them. If we don't support what is already there, we're going to start all over. These people have already, people sat in these meetings, in these committees and questioned and reviewed resume after resume after resume, asked questions. These people were interviewed and hired for those positions, and now we're telling them that they're not good enough for this job.
Can the superintendent answer first, please, Dr. Page? Yeah.
I don't want to leave any perception that the job descriptions have been written in any way that any of the existing administrators that would contractually, through a restructure of Southbridge Middle High School, that school would no longer exist. There have been no job descriptions that have been written to the exclusion of anyone. It is the recommendation of council that we use the process to recreate those positions and have people reapply. That is fair. It allows multiple people to apply, and that is the advice that we've been given. So I don't want to leave the perception that we have written people out of a position, because that is simply not true.
Again, Madam Chair, I respectfully request, I really think we need to get clarification on that, absolutely in writing from our council, that basically says you have to re-advertise, re-interview, and do all of this kind of stuff just in order to create a position. Can I give you an example of why I don't believe that that's the case? In 2012, we had two buildings and they were combined into one. There were existing assistant principals that were principals of a middle school, assistant principal of a middle school, and assistant principal of a high school. Those jobs were not terminated and recreated. Those people were simply moved into the assistant principal jobs to the new building. The only jobs that were eliminated and recreated was the principal of the middle school, principal of the high school. And then there was established a Southbridge Middle High School principal position. Those were the only positions that were affected in that district at that time. And so if it wasn't a legal requirement then, I can't understand why it's a legal requirement now. Further to that point, according to the existing structure, as far as the assistant principals go, one assistant principal is currently assigned to the middle school and one is assigned to the high school. That's in your document in terms of how it's written. So therefore, I don't understand why there would be a need to terminate middle school principal positions, or middle high school principal positions, and create new ones and go through this long protracted process. The other part of that is really the impact on time and lost productivity that this entire process poses, an unbelievably egregious, undue risk to the stability of this district, and in order to get the job done over the summer in terms of curriculum revision, writing the AIP, and doing all of this kind of stuff. So my real question is, while all of these interviews are going on and all this stuff is happening, who's going to be doing all of the normal attention to the details to prepare for the NEASC visit, to prepare for DESE to come back and do an evaluation in the fall, to make sure the curriculum and everything is shored up? My understanding is all the people that you're talking about that would be doing this are going to be busy participating in job interviews and search committees. Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else who would like to speak to this issue? Seeing none, I'm going to request a vote, I'm going to request a roll call on the vote to approve the superintendent's proposed restructure of Southbridge, the central office, Southbridge Middle High School. Excuse me, I'm sorry, sir, we're in the middle of our deliberation here. Can I have a roll call, please?
Dr. Page?
My intention on this is, I would really like to vote no. What I'm concerned about is that this vote is already stacked. Okay? The problem is...
Is that a yes or a no? Or how do you vote, Dr. Page? We've discussed. How do you vote, Dr. Page?
No.
Thank you.
Mrs. Donovan? Abstain. Mrs. Quinney?
Yes, Julian? Yes?
I'm sorry?
I said yes.
You said yes? Okay. Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
No.
Mr. Olivo?
No.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
No. Thank you very much. Excuse me. Can we have Counselor Vecchia removed, please? Officer, can we have Counselor Vecchia removed? Counselor Vecchia, you just gave an obscene hand gesture to this school committee. Yes, you did. I'd like you removed, please. And if anybody has that on tape, I'd like that preserved. Please be removed from the building, or the premises, the meeting. Thank you very much. At this time, I'd just like to take a few minutes recess, if we could, to allow people that want to leave the building and the premises so that we can resume the rest of the agenda. I'd like to resume the meeting. I don't know if the camera crew is coming or if we're on the remotes. We're good to go? Okay. Thank you. So, am I set to go? I'm just confused. I got the thumbs up. Thank you. Good evening. Welcome back to the Southbridge School Committee meeting, Tuesday, June 2nd, 2015. Time is 8:38. School Committee is present on the dais along with Superintendent Stanton, so we're going to resume where we left off. We will be postponing or moving agenda item B, the vote to approve the student activities accounts, only because there are some questions of the committee, and Mr. Osborne couldn't be here to answer those. So next would be agenda item C, which would be a vote to declare as surplus certain kitchen equipment at 25 Cole Avenue.
So moved.
We have a motion from Mrs. Quinney.
Second.
Second from Mrs. Donovan. Is there any discussion on this? Any discussion whatsoever? Seeing none?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just to clarify, we are just voting to declare that as surplus and turn it over to the town?
Yes, there's some kitchen equipment, and what we would have to do would be to declare these items surplus so that they in turn could be donated or disposed of.
Thank you.
That's what we would be doing, so we'd be voting them surplus. Any other questions? Yeah.
Is any of this equipment, could any of this equipment be used at any of the other schools?
That's what I was going to ask the superintendent. Are you aware of this, if there's any requests?
I am aware. I'm aware that Mr. Como has looked through all of this and vetted it through the food service department, and these would be considered extraneous at this point, and therefore surplus.
Okay. Any other considerations? Seeing none, show of hands, please. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. There are 6 of us. Mrs. Congdon's abstaining, please note. Motion carries. Then we have agenda item 8D, the vote to approve the 2014-2015, well, it's 2015 summer school program and fees. It says 2004-2015, but it's 2015 summer school program and fees. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Quinney. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Donovan. Any discussion? Seeing none, show of hands. This is unanimous. Thank you. See how we all get along? Agenda item 8E, vote to approve the Child Nutrition Outreach Program for summer 2015. This was actually discussed at the last school committee meeting. I need a motion.
So moved.
Mrs.
Second.
Quinney makes the motion. Dr. Page seconds the motion. Is there any discussion on that agenda item? Seeing none, show of hands. Thank you. That carries. I believe it was unanimous. The next is agenda item 8F. This is a vote to ratify a personnel memorandum of agreement with SEIU Local 888.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mrs. Donovan, seconded by Mrs. Quinney. Is there any discussion on this agenda item? Seeing none, show of hands, please. It's unanimous. Next would be a vote to appoint a representative to serve on the Southern Worcester County Educational Collaborative Board for the 2015-2016 school year. That is typically the superintendent. So we would be voting to appoint Ms. Stanton, representative to serve on the Southern Worcester County Educational Collaborative Board for the 2015-2016 school year. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Quinney,
Second.
seconded by Dr. Page. Any discussion? Show of hands. It's unanimous. This is agenda item 8H. This is a vote to designate MASC Incorporated as one of Southbridge School Committee's representatives pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 150E, Section 1, for the particular purpose of selecting an arbitrator and receiving arbitrator decisions. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Quinney. Is there a second? Seconded by Mrs. Congdon. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, show of hands. Unanimous. We are going to remove agenda item 8I from tonight's agenda. We'll take that up at a later date. So next, we're moving to agenda item 8J, which is approval of overnight field trip to New York City. This is the field trip that was proposed by Miriam Krantz at the last meeting. Does somebody have the original wording of that motion? I apologize. Oh, maybe I do here. Okay, sorry. So this would be a vote to conditionally approve an overnight field trip to New York City in January 2016 as presented by Ms. Miriam Krantz, pending final approval by the school committee as detailed in District Policy JJH. Note that final approval will not be granted by the school committee until all preparation from the trip have been completed, including but not limited to all logistical details involving transportation, accommodation arrangements, supervision, and funding. The school committee requires that final approval be sought no less than 90 days prior to the scheduled trip dates.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Levo makes the motion. Mrs. Quinney seconds the motion. Any discussion? Show of hands. All in favor? Thank you. Agenda item 8K will be also removed from the agenda. That's something that is related to the collective bargaining agreement, so that will need to be discussed at a future meeting in executive session prior to coming out with that. Unfinished business, the FY16 budget update. Ms. Stanton, is there something you'd like to report on the budget?
Yes, thank you. Town Council has voted the budget for the school department at $25,574,689. This represents a 0.9 increase to the budget from last year. Our level service budget proposal was 2.64%. So the difference that we are looking at is approximately $460,000. So that represents a significant budget deficit that we will be addressing with input from the building principals, with input from school committee. I would like to say that we are a majority of our resources is expended in personnel. So when we're looking at $460,000, I don't want to stir up anything, but we will be looking at personnel to make decisions to reach that gap in funding. I will say that it is my goal to try and work to reduce the amount of positions that are eliminated due to attrition or retirement and resignation, so that we would not be filling positions. Therefore, staff members would not necessarily be losing a job. I would like to avoid, if possible, the idea of pink slips. I think that is inflammatory, but I don't want there to be any idea that we can meet this budget shortfall easily, and that there is any sort of cushion in the budget to meet this. This will have a detrimental effect on our ability to provide interventions for students at the Eastford Road School in particular, to provide special education support to students that is desperately needed at the Eastford Road School in particular. It will create a shortfall in our request to have an evaluation team leader to monitor our compliance at the high school level. It will also impact our ability to provide the coaching supports that we're looking for to move out of level 4. It will also impact our ability to do our curriculum review in science and provide textbooks as has been requested. And it will also impact our ability as we move forward to implement professional development and mentoring. Those are programs that will be deeply cut in this sort of budget environment. So as I said, we would be looking to not fill positions which will most likely lead to increased class sizes to address the shortfall. And at this point, I would ask, I think, the school committee if we could have a meeting of the whole to address that issue so that school committee's goals are somewhat addressed as we move forward to meet the gap.
Yep. We will schedule that meeting. Sure. Mrs. Donovan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Ms. Stanton. Are we under any type of, timeline or deadline that we have to show or make these necessary adjustments? Do they have to be done before month's end or fiscal year end or June 15th? That was a date that came out before.
June 15th is in our policy.
June 15th, so it's 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Okay, thank you.
Okay, get cracking. Any other discussion on that? No. Okay, so now under unfinished business, the superintendent search proposal. This is a possible motion and possible vote regarding a superintendent search. A school committee member requested this agenda item. Mr. Abrahamson.
Madam Chair, thank you. It had been my intention to move in favor for a proposal for a search for the next superintendent of the Southbridge School District, but due to the current politically infused atmosphere in Southbridge regarding a search, I will not make the motion, but I'll read the proposal. First, however, I think it's necessary to point out the timeline of my proposal. As you know, Madam Chair, the school committee did not, as has been suggested, reject a search. Instead, the objection was to the proposed expedited search. Also at that time, the committee voted to extend Acting Superintendent Cheryl Stanton's contract for 1 year, as has been urged by MASC and DESE to provide district leadership stability. This all occurred at the school committee meeting of May 12th, 2015. You will remember, Madam Chair, that I sent you an email letter with my proposal for moving forward on Saturday, May 16th, and you distributed copies to the entire school committee on Sunday, May 17th. On Monday, May 18th, the Southbridge Town Council voted a letter of no confidence in the Southbridge School Committee. This proposal then was not a reaction to that vote. Further muddying of the waters has since been created by suggesting that the committee was saying that no superintendent would come to Southbridge. Then the conversation turned to when a search should begin, the ideal time for a search, or whether or not there is an ideal time. Of course, opinions differ on this, but perhaps we can look to the town manager search process as a guide. When the first search was put on hold due to a referendum to change the town government, the search resumed, or a second search started when that effort failed. A new search was commenced in July, and by November was stuck in neutral, according to a November 19th, 2014 T&G article. By December 2014, the second search was canceled. In a December 14, 2014 article in the Worcester Telegram and Gazette, the town council chairman stated that the original search was put together at about the ideal time, according to the former manager, the search firms interviewed, and others in the industry. But the council's decision to respect the referendum vote, as well as be transparent, honest, and respectful of the manager candidates, resulted in missing the prime window and landed Southbridge in a time of year where most good managers are solidly under contract, and also put Southbridge head-to-head with a handful of other vacancies in central Massachusetts. Most gainfully employed managers and administrators are contracted through the fiscal year, and many have a 6-month notice of non-renewal stipulation in their contracts. Therefore, early in the new year should be the best time to search for a permanent manager. Madam Chair, I will note that the town manager search that commenced in July 2014 resulted in what the council chair termed a shallow pool of candidates, and the search committee was unable to come up with 3 whom the committee was comfortable bringing forward as finalists. Finally, Madam Chair, before I read my proposal for the public's benefit, I would point out that any search for a superintendent or a town manager must respond to the needs of the entire town of Southbridge. Our search must not bring forward a candidate, for example, who has a history of being combative with the municipal side of government, and the town manager search should not bring anyone forward who has a history of being combative with his or her own school district. Both scenarios would virtually guarantee that the current tensions between the town side and the school side would continue for many years to come. Here's the letter that I wrote to Ms. McLaughlin on May 16th. Dear Ms. McLaughlin, as you are aware, all members of the Southbridge School Committee are eager to begin a formal search process for the next superintendent of the Southbridge Public Schools. While the discussion and subsequent vote to extend current acting superintendent Cheryl Stanton's contract for 1 year until June 30th, 2016, in order to stabilize the district's leadership, resulted in a 4-3 vote in favor. I believe with that behind us, there is common ground that can move us forward and set us on a path to achieving the expressed goals of all concerned. I have reviewed the tape of the meeting of May 12th, 2015, several times, to listen to comments and concerns expressed by the school committee members, and with that as a guide, I propose that the school committee take the following step at its next meeting on May 27th, 2015. Authorize the current chairperson, Ms. McLaughlin, to communicate in writing the committee's desire to have the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, MASC, conduct a full-service guided search for a superintendent of schools for Southbridge to be appointed on July 1st, 2016. Inform the MASC that the Southbridge School Committee would begin using their service in July 2015. request confirmation of this in writing by MASC. And then my rationale. A, all members have expressed confidence in MASC. Seeking out other search firms will only serve to delay the process. B, as many have indicated, MASC is the least costly option for the school district. Even with a full-service search, there are options for the school committee to consider that would result in lowering the expense. C, the type of search conducted will be what everyone seems to agree is the norm. It'll be transparent, open, fair, and will involve the entire community. D, MASC has stated that their job will not end until a candidate is brought forward that has the committee's support. If none of the candidates is acceptable at one set of interviews, they will bring another set of candidates forward. E, MASC's full search proposal states, and I quote, should the individual retained as superintendent fail to complete 2 years of service to the district, MASC will assume responsibilities of reinstituting the search process at no additional charge to the school committee, unquote. The financial considerations make this immensely important. And F, finally, starting the process in July will assuage the concerns of those leaving the committee who do not want to impose their will on a future committee. They may abstain from voting. Also, MASC can unofficially begin preparing for the July 2015 starting date, thus saving additional time. Thank you, Ms. McLaughlin, for considering this. If it's acceptable, I would ask you to distribute copies of this letter to all members of the Southbridge School Committee, which you did on May 17th, and to any others that you deem appropriate. Sincerely, Brent Abrahamson. I'm not going to make that motion, Madam Chair, because I really don't know where it would go at this point. So I turn it over to you.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion on this? Mrs. Congdon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Mr. Abrahamson. My only question or comment was that I know we already voted to do a search in January, I think it was. I can't remember the exact date. But I know we had also authorized you to consult or work with MASC to put together a survey. I just was questioning how that survey is coming along. I didn't know, and I know that you had put July down, but if we could distribute that survey to the staff, maybe by the end of the year, or even if they have a community survey, kind of follow-up for the end of the year, that we might be able to distribute prior to July. That was my only concern regarding this, was if we could do that survey before July 1st, then I would want to do maybe this immediately. If not, I wouldn't mind putting it off to July 1st, but it was more along the lines of the survey, so that's my question to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'll take that in kind of two parts. As I recollect, the vote in January was to authorize me to contact the search companies for proposals. And so that is what I did, and we know how that all played out. It's unfortunate that the last company took, that after MASC presented on April 14th, ProAct was scheduled to be here on May 12th, and they backed out a couple days before. So had they notified us sooner, things could have been backed up. So that's where that is. I did contact Mr. Kuchar. I contacted him right about the time that he had the day on the Hill. He was preparing for the day on the Hill, and he said, we absolutely can help you. I'm really busy preparing for this, and we need to set time to discuss what you might want in that survey. And so since that time, because of things that have transpired, I admittedly haven't followed up with him, but am happy to do that. Would also maybe like some input from this committee regarding that survey, because I'm not specifically sure what we want to put in that, so I don't know if anybody has suggestions. If they want to email them to me, I can compile them and we can get that ball rolling. I can send it out to him. He said they can turn around very quickly once he has input from the district. Dr. Page?
Madam Chair, thank you. My understanding from Mr. Kuchar was that he had they have templates
They
sort of
do.
ready to go. So if we could just get that process going, maybe we can, take a look at it, and it would be better for us to sort of prompt us to maybe think of things that are
They do have
important to us.
templates, but they customize them, and so I apologize. It was the day on the Hill. He said he needed some time on that. That's a really big advocacy day for all school committees in Massachusetts, and, I didn't follow up with him after that, so I would have to do that. Yep.
So my question, I guess, would be to any committee members. I think the only company that came forward would be MASC, and no other company wanted to be able to help us. I think when I was mentioning the expedited search, I talked about MASC in that role that they are advised to help us versus the role that we could appoint them to conduct a full-service guided search, but since the contract of Ms. Stanton was voted on, I have no problem with conducting or asking MASC to conduct a full-service guided search. I hate to steal Mr. Abraham's thunder, but
You can
I
make a
have no
motion if you
problem
wish. That's fine.
in making that motion to authorize the current chairperson, Ms. McLaughlin, to communicate in writing the committee's desire to have the Massachusetts Association of School Committees conduct a full-service guided search for a superintendent of schools for Southbridge. The only change I would make would be, and this is open, would be to be appointed upon completion and appointment upon final selection of the committee, and to inform the MASC that the Southbridge School Committee would begin using their service immediately, and request confirmation of this in writing by MASC.
That's your motion?
Yes.
Did you get that, Julian?
I didn't get the whole thing, no.
I can hand it to her
Yeah, can you, well, we can give it to you.
in writing.
Yeah. Mhm. Is it written out?
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't you? Yeah. Is there a second on that motion?
Could you just read it again?
Okay,
Sure.
yeah, read it.
Authorize the current chairperson, Ms. McLaughlin, to communicate in writing the committee's desire to have the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, MASC, conduct a full-service guided search for a superintendent of schools for Southbridge to be appointed upon completion and appointment upon final selection of the school committee. Inform MASC that the Southbridge School Committee would begin using their service immediately, and request confirmation of this in writing by MASC.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Mrs. Quinney?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My only concern is that we've extended Ms. Stanton's contract through June 30th of 2016. So to advertise a position that would potentially be filled prior to that, I think is premature, and setting out a date of July 1st, 2016 also gives that 6-month window for those contracts that people are already in positions in order to give that 6-month notice as is required for some.
Yeah, most superintendents have a 6-month notice clause. I think that's what she's referring to. Is that
Yes.
what you're referring to? So,
Yes, I would.
Clarification.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, could
Yeah.
I just request clarification? Maybe I misinterpreted what you were suggesting, but I thought maybe that was so that this could extend beyond that. Say we weren't able to fill it, that there was not a date certain that we're going to contract with MASC. Because when Mr. Kuchar was here, they said they'll continue to work for us until they're finished, right? Is that what your intention was with the removing
yes.
the date?
So it says for a superintendent of schools for Southbridge to be appointed on, and we've.
Upon.
Right, so it says on July 1st, 2016. You've recommended changing that to upon completion and final selection by the school committee. So the appointment would be upon selection. So if we said, this is our candidate this is our finalist on January 24th or March 5th, we would appoint them for July 1st, or we would appoint them March 25th? That is my concern.
It would end up, because of her contract, we would end up having to appoint for July 1st, 2016. So you could select that candidate, but they wouldn't be appointed until the date of the existing contract be ended.
Right, so.
But we could, I left that open only because you might appoint them earlier to kind of work in transition together. But that was just the motion.
Madam Chair, would it not be wise to keep it as it is and then deal with those difficulties as they come
That's
up?
fine, but we have a motion and it's been
True.
seconded,
Okay.
so it would have to be an amendment
Okay.
to the motion.
Well, I'll just vote on this one then.
Okay.
I move to amend the current language to remove upon completion of final selection by the school committee, change that to on July 1st, 2016.
Second.
So we have a motion for an amendment. And we have a second. Do we have any discussion on the amendment? Okay, so may I have a roll call on the amendment?
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes?
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
No.
Mr. Olivo?
All right, let me just get a point of clarification, I'm sorry. So when we make our selection, that person will start July 1st
Yes,
and not immediately. Is that
correct.
correct, Ms. Congdon?
Yes,
That's what the amendment is.
Yes.
yes.
And you're stating that upon completion of the search, that person selected would start the position?
That would be upon completion of the search and when we would appoint. So it wasn't given a time certain.
So because of Ms. Stanton's contract, we are set to that date being the 1st of July.
Can't change it.
Have we agreed to the point of clarification?
Yes.
Have we agreed to the contract?
We had voted to extend the contract. We have not ratified the contract. We have not ratified terms. But we've taken a legal vote to extend that contract.
So she's contracted through 2016.
She's contracted through June 30th, 2016. Yes. That's the effect of the vote. This would,
Yes.
yes, thank you.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes,
We have 6 yes, 1 no.
thank you. Now we're going to vote on the amended motion. So the amended motion, bear with me, is authorize the current chairperson, Mrs. McLaughlin, to communicate in writing the committee's desire to have the Massachusetts Association of School Committees conduct a full-service guided search for a superintendent of schools to be appointed on July 1st, 2016. Inform the MASC that the Southbridge School Committee would like to begin using their service immediately. Request confirmation of this in writing by MASC. Did I correctly state the motion? Thank you. So now, is there any discussion on the motion as amended? Seeing none, can I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
All yes.
Thank you. And now we're going to move on to new business, which would be the recent vote of the Southbridge Town Council, a motion and a possible vote regarding the Southbridge Town Council's letter of no confidence in the Southbridge School Committee.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Abrahamson.
I have a motion that I want to make, and if it receives a a second for the sake of discussion. I'd like to talk about that and then yield to anyone else who wants to speak. That would be okay. I made a copy for the recording secretary because it's a bit involved. Madam Chair, I move that the Southbridge School Committee authorize the chair to request that the State Attorney General review the concerns lodged against the committee by the Southbridge Town Council and take appropriate action. In support of this request, the chair is instructed to include 5 items sent to the Attorney General. 1, a copy of the Southbridge Home Rule Charter. 2, the video recording of the meeting of the Southbridge School Committee of May 12, 2015. 3, the video recording of the meeting of the Southbridge Town Council of May 18, 2015. 4, the letter of no confidence dated May 20, 2015, sent to the Southbridge School Committee by the Southbridge Town Council. And 5, the video recording of the Education and Human Services Southbridge Town Council Subcommittee meeting of May 20th, 2015.
Second.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, when serious concerns occur, such as those Southbridge Town Council has with the Southbridge School Committee, there are broadly speaking 2 ways to having them resolved. The first leads to an orderly legal process, an appeal to a higher authority, in this case the State Attorney General, who then determines what needs to be done to resolve the issue. The other way is the one we are seeing demonstrated, as the Southbridge Town Council forgoes the orderly legal process and seeks to have the Southbridge School Committee tried and convicted in the court of public opinion. Of course, Madam Chair, people are rightly concerned about the education of the children of Southbridge and with the state of the Southbridge Public Schools overall. Of course we want to hear their concerns. Of course they have a right to criticize their elected public officials. And of course we understand that sometimes public perception is based upon rumors, innuendos, and falsehoods. Madam Chair, at its meeting of May 18, 2015, the Southbridge Town Council openly discussed many of the rumors, innuendos, and falsehoods and presented them in a way that made them appear factual. Then they took the extraordinary step in taking an official vote for a letter of no confidence in the Southbridge School Committee. This has put the Southbridge Town Council in a position of being elected officials in one town body, officially questioning the integrity of elected officials in another town body. This virtually unprecedented move leaves the Southbridge School Committee no alternative but to appeal to a higher authority, the Attorney General, to investigate. Madam Chair, I welcome an immediate, thorough, and legal investigation into this matter, where documents are examined, files are opened, emails are perused, testimony is taken under oath, and anything else an investigator determines is pertinent to arriving at the facts is pursued vigorously. The citizens have a right to know the truth, and I urge my colleagues to support my motion to begin without delay the legal process to attaining it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Abrahamson. Is there any other discussion on this motion? Mr. Olivo?
I just want to know what kind of research has been done as to the monetary impact that this will have on the district. We're already short money to move this on. I need to know what that impact is going to be.
To move it to the Attorney General?
Yeah, I don't know if
None.
it's going to cost us anything or
No.
not. I don't know that.
None.
Madam Chair?
Dr.
Yes,
Baker?
the only sort of point or maybe opinion that I would like to make on the matter is that vote is legally meaningless. All it was really a message. And we could do with what we want. We could throw it in the trash. We could pay attention to it, maybe try and figure out ways to settle our differences or whatever. We could sit here and do the same thing to them based on they didn't fund the budget we wanted. I don't see any productivity in that at this point.
Madam Chair?
That's my opinion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I just don't know what problem. I don't think that's going to solve a problem. I think my preference to dealing with this would be to try and sort of figure out a way to mend the fences and move forward in cooperative fashion with the town. Further antagonism with the town is not going to help us for next year. My view is that we start working diligently now to identify the resource needs that and the shortfalls that we have, try and work with the town, educate them or communicate them effectively with sort of a cogent proposal. If this is why we need this money, this is going to how it's going to impact our education of our students, and I think we could be much more productive spending time that way. That's my.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
The search for truth should not be considered a waste of time. And if you have two sides that are in disagreement, you don't just keep yelling at each other. You get someone to settle it. That's what our courts do. This is just an orderly way of getting it done rather than having the shouting fest and other things that have been going on. Someone says, this is right, someone says, this is right, and you get someone to judge.
Oh, yeah, Mrs. Condon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with what my colleague said, sitting beside me. I just think in moving forward, maybe we call a meeting of both committees and we have an adult conversation as to feelings and kind of try to work together to move forward to benefit everybody and all the stakeholders in our community and the students, rather than continue to put bad blood on both sides. So I would make a recommendation that maybe we can have a joint meeting and have, even if it's a mediator that presides over that meeting, and everyone can air everything and try to move forward and work together for the reasons why we're elected to benefit everyone in the community and try to improve things. Thank you.
Anybody else? There seems to be of late a power struggle in this community, and when this vote of no confidence was taken, I contacted legal counsel to find out if there were any legal implications to the vote. And I'll tell you what I was told, and then what I've, I'll read this, and then I'll weigh in on my own. First, the vote is certainly more bad publicity for the town of Southbridge and our schools, but there are no legal implications to the vote. The Southbridge Home Rule Charter vests responsibility for the public school system with the school committee, not the town council. According to the town charter, Chapter 5-2.1, the school committee established under this charter shall have the general charge of the public schools of the town. The school committee shall have the power to select and terminate a superintendent of schools, establish educational goals and policies for the schools consistent with the requirements of the laws of the Commonwealth, and establish standards established by the Commonwealth. School committee shall have all the powers and duties given to school committees by the laws of the Commonwealth. The town council consists of elected officials just like the school committee. The town council does not hold any special position or rank above the school committee. The town council is responsible for the town, and those duties are clearly delineated, and the school committee is responsible for the schools. It is not the job of the town council to provide any oversight to the school committee. They are responsible for whatever is in their authority with regard to the town, and the school committee is responsible for whatever is under our authority with regards to the schools. The only time the authority of the two municipal bodies intersect under the law is with regard to voting a bottom-line budget. Because the town council lacks jurisdiction over the schools by charter or statute, you are correct, Dr. Page, their no confidence motion was out of order. And finally, there is a principle in the law called comity, not comedy, comity, C-O-M-I-T-Y, which in government holds that respect should be accorded for the decision of another who has the right to make that decision. Out of respect for the jurisdiction of the school committee, the town council ought to respect the decisions of the school committee, just as the school committee would be expected to respect the decisions by the town council over matters in which they have exclusive jurisdiction. I'm sure our colleagues on the town council would take umbrage to this school committee officially weighing in on matters pertaining to the landfill operation, the police, the fire, and the DPW departments. Would it be appropriate for school committee members individually or as a collective body to attempt to influence the town manager search process or insert ourselves in town personnel matters? Absolutely not. Our colleagues have leveled many charges against this committee. The charges have a degree of what Stephen Colbert refers to as truthiness. The idea that something must be true just because someone genuinely believes it to be true, regardless of the facts. Other claims in the no confidence letter are so sweeping and vague, they could only have been written not as a call to action, but as a publicity stunt to incite the citizens against an easy target. It's a political win before the big election. I've been advised against responding to every single charge because that might give some the appearance that the claims in the respectfully submitted letter have merit. I have been cautioned some colleagues want an all-out brawl, a public volley of endless accusations and rebuttals, of snide remarks and infighting. But I think our citizens deserve better than that, and I don't want to play in that sandbox. I will address one specific complaint because it addresses specific to me for the record. And that was that they have failed to allow citizens and town councilors to speak on agenda items during school committee meetings. My recollection is that that has happened twice this year. I terminated one individual's privilege of address for comments about district staff last fall. That was done to protect both the speaker, who was a minor, and the subject of her public comments. Most recently, a town councilor approached the podium while the school committee was in the middle of deliberation. Not all school committee members had an opportunity to speak on or finish speaking on the agenda item, but the suggestion is that I really abused my authority by not recognizing the counselor. A fatal error I now know to be the straw that broke the camel's back. Setting aside the fact that the counselor's timing was poor, or that this counselor had already expressed numerous opinions on the topic at hand many different times and in many different public forums, school committee policy on public input differs from that of the town council. Policy BEDH is clear. Public input at school committee meetings occurs at the start of each regularly scheduled meeting. Any citizen wishing to speak on any agenda item, whether it appears on our agenda or not, any citizen wishing to speak on any item, whether it appears on our agenda or not, is invited to speak at the beginning of the meeting. Lest anyone think I created this rule for my own convenience, this portion of the policy has been in effect since 2007. I do believe some town councilors think they are doing a public service for the community by criticizing the school committee, but I submit that they are not. Sometimes that's what happens when you possess small pieces of a larger picture, or when you are presented a picture but not the story behind it, or when your perspective is just completely different. The turtle sees the bugs on the ground, the giraffe sees the trees and the leaves in the zoo, but they're occupying the same space. Neither is wrong or evil, just very different perspectives. Or how about the dress on the internet that went viral a short time ago? Was it white and gold or blue and black? Same dress, different answers. That's why Edgar Allan Poe cautioned people to believe only half of what they see and none of what they hear. I would submit to you that the town council's letter of no confidence was based on not fact, but by suggestion, rumor, innuendo, and the like. Does nobody but me find it completely odd that not one town councilor reached out prior to this vote? Not just recently, like right before the no confidence letter, but pretty much ever. At no time did any counselor approach me and ask to have a conversation related to any of the sweeping claims in the letter. Hello? It's like being stuck in a perpetual Three's Company episode. Jack overhears a portion of a conversation or something he misinterprets from Chrissy and Janet. Everyone freaks out and chaos ensues. On TV, it's hilarious. On TV, the misunderstanding is resolved in 30 minutes and everything's cleared up. Everyone hugs it out at the end. Even as a kid, I remember thinking how strange that was. If Jack had just asked Janet or Chrissy about what he heard or saw or thought, maybe things could have been cleared up sooner. That would have solved the problem, but it wouldn't have made for good TV. I don't have to tell the viewers how it works here. Picture the exact opposite of that. Do you want solutions or do you want the TV show? This is why in Southbridge, the show remains the same. Different players, but the same result. Same circus, different monkeys. It does not matter who is on the town council, who is on the school committee, who the town manager is, or who the superintendent is. We live with a whole bunch of jack trippers in Dysfunction Junction, a cross between Three's Company, Jerry Springer, and a dash of honey boo-boo politics thrown in for good measure. Is that how a high-functioning municipal government is supposed to work? Let's not sit down and talk to one another face-to-face and clear the air, as my colleagues have suggested tonight. Let's try to embarrass one another. Let's take to our TV, our Twitter, our Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, Yahoo accounts to vent. What are we, 12 years old? Our community deserves better than that. It deserves better from its elected officials. I am embarrassed, not by the vote that was taken or the letter that was written, but by the extreme lack of respect and professionalism in public service today. No respect for positions, no respect for authority, no respect for confidentiality, and no respect for boundaries. We should know better. In our positions as school committee members and town councilors, we should set an example for all in our community, including our youth. Unfortunately, the kids in Southbridge have seen enough adults behaving poorly over the last year to last a lifetime. But lest I end on a bleak note, I do want the town council and the community to know there is hope, because after the election, everything's going to magically fall into place. Everything's going to be better. There's going to be mutual respect and trust. People are going to listen to one another. Everyone's going to sit down and work out small problems before they turn into big problems. The town's going to stop blaming the schools for a budget crisis that occurred over a decade ago by people that have long since been gone from the district. Our schools will receive all the funding they need. There will be no gossip. There will be no scheming. There will be no games. Only good, honest government. You won't want to miss it. So make sure you grab your popcorn on July 1st and tune in.
Madam Chair.
Is there any other discussion?
Madam Chair, if I may, and just one last thing from me. We need to do this not just for this sitting school committee. We have to do this so this doesn't happen again.
Mrs. Quinney?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had intended to speak on the agenda item, but not on the motion, but it seems that the two have become one. So my thoughts on the issue of the letter of no confidence are the town council is absolutely entitled to their opinion, and I do not take it personally that their opinion is different than mine. I do take exception to that things are presented in the letter as proof and as candid facts, when in my estimation they are perceptions not based in fact. And if you believe it to be true and factual, then that's your perception and you present it in that way. I too take great exception to the fact that within it, it said that there were multiple attempts and town councilors and the town manager reaching out prior to this letter being sent. I know that I never received any outreach from either of those groups of people. I did have one discussion with one town councilor regarding budget and but nothing regarding anything contained within this letter. And I find it slightly disingenuous that it is signed respectfully submitted. I think showing respect for the school committee and the town council is there are steps that you take prior to sending out a letter, a conversation, a joint meeting. We haven't had a joint meeting in a long time. I think that would have been a respectful way to move forward in this, to have those discussions openly and frankly. And I'm not opposed to doing them in the future to discuss the challenges that are presented in the letter. And I don't disagree that we have a lot of issues to discuss. By no stretch of anyone's imagination are we a stellar, overperforming school district that doesn't have issues that need to be addressed by every stakeholder in the community at all. But I would just, not only as elected officials, but I think as citizens of the community and as people, to respectfully submit something is very different than being respectful of one another as people and as officials. I think if we have challenges, we need to talk about them, and a lot of this perception and issues and strife and splitting of the community could have potentially been dealt with at a meeting and having frank discussions and communication. And I think communication's a two-way street, and moving forward, I would hope that both town councilors and school committee members would be respectful to one another. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lebo?
I'd like to just give my opinion, and I do like what Ms. Quinney said, and I do also echo what Dr. Page said, that to me this letter carries no weight. Like water off a duck's back, you just let it roll. Moving forward, to keep the backdoor politics, to keep the he said, she said going on would be unproductive. I think we'd be more productive to have a sit down and both kind of just weigh in on what the expectations are of each other. And it's just simple. We take care of the schools and you support us, instead of writing stuff like this that can divide us. There is power in unity. There is no power in division. If we are not united in focusing on the children of the school district, then we will be unproductive. And that sit down, I think, is in order. I think we need to. I think we need to have that open discussion. And that's all I'll say on that.
Thank you. Mrs. Donovan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have prepared a statement as well. I did not see that town council vote live. However, I was able to catch it I had heard about it, obviously, after it happened. And then I was able to watch it later on, a couple days after, when it was finally put on public access. And a lot of the things in there were generic, if you will. They weren't really aimed at anybody specifically other than the school committee as a group. However, there were certain parts of it that were directly shot at school committee leadership. And I took that to be me and perhaps Mrs. McLaughlin, but I'm not going to speak for her. So I had to come up with what was going to be my response to the things that were said relative to school committee leadership. And this is what my statement is in return to that. I think back to 3 years ago when I called my parents and told them that I wanted to run for school committee. They were not crazy about the idea, but they knew in my heart that I was trying to make a positive difference in the educational environment for all the kids in this town. My father, a longtime Southbridge resident and former Southbridge High School teacher, told me, if you're going to do this, you better grow a really thick, tough layer of skin. God rest his soul, here I am 3 years later. My term is coming to an end, and I feel like I have the skin of a crocodile. I will proceed with a respectful response to a very disrespectful attack by council members at a televised public meeting. There are some given points while I try to respond. There are always two sides to every story. Everyone has a right to an opinion, and there is nothing that I'm going to say that will change the minds of those who already have definitive opinions about me. So I choose to take the high road, and I refuse to engage in a tit-for-tat exercise. I saw the vote of no confidence as nothing more than adult bullying. The catalyst for the letter was in pure reaction to a vote taken by the majority of the school committee to not engage in an expedited superintendent search the week before. I want the record to state that I am not, nor have I ever been against a superintendent search. What I was against was the attempt to put an unsolicited individual in place under the guise of an expedited search. Never in my term have I once digressed from doing, thinking, and voting what I thought was best for all students in all schools. My votes were always based on facts. Facts that I had been given from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, and sitting superintendents. People and organizations who I look to be the professionals. Of course, some of these facts were facts that elected and appointed town officials, as well as the general public, were not and could not be privy to for reasons of confidentiality. I contemplated on votes to be taken using my moral compass, and I always voted with integrity. Of course, some will disagree with that, and there's nothing I'm going to do about that. I know who I am, and I refuse to change who I am and engage in a new voting process simply for the sake of being pressured and threatened by bullies. To the members of the town council who voted in favor of the letter of no confidence, I'm very sorry that you feel that way. As an individual school committee member, it was never my intention to give the impression that I am or have been secretive, uncooperative, or that I exert control by force or fear as stated in your letter. To the community of Southbridge, I am very sorry that our town and our schools are once again in the headlines and receiving nothing but negative publicity. I will be the first to acknowledge that the overall educational environment and climate has not changed much over the course of my 3-year term. There is still high turnover, instability, low MCAS scores, a high dropout rate, low graduation rates, and division among staff and administration at all levels, and there are still many adults behaving badly. My term has traveled through many difficult and tumultuous events, and I've learned that I cannot control the actions of others, but what I can control is how I react. I want it to be known that while I may have the skin of a crocodile, the same is not and should not be said of my family members, especially my children. I want to communicate, especially to my children, that sometimes doing the right thing can be the most difficult and awful thing that you can do. I'm sorry, I read that line wrong. I want to communicate, especially to my children, that sometimes doing the right thing can be the most difficult, and often it can be met with ruthless reaction. But no matter what, you must always do what you think is right, regardless of what others may say, do, or pressure you into behind closed doors, or most especially in the open and public arena. And sometimes you may find yourself on the losing side despite your efforts to do the right thing. Nevertheless, if you are true to yourself, then you can always hold your head high, be proud of who you are, and know that you are not defined by a vote. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mrs. Donovan. Anybody else? So I think we have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, Can I have a roll call on the motion, please?
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
No.
Mr. Levo?
No.
Dr. Page?
No.
Mrs. Donovan?
No.
Mrs. Quinney?
No.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
You have 2 yes and 5 no.
Thank you. The motion doesn't carry. Perhaps we can schedule that joint meeting sometime in the near future. Thank you. Okay. Now, member forum.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
one more item of new business.
I'm sorry.
Business.
New business?
We had
B.
just done new business?
Yeah.
The next
One more item.
Oh,
B.
I'm sorry. I don't know what I'm looking at.
It didn't print on the new one.
It didn't print on the new
The
agenda.
next regular school committee meeting will be held on Tuesday.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. The next regular school committee meeting will be held on June 9th at 7 PM in council chambers. Thank you for that. Sorry, for some reason it wasn't on my agenda. Now, member forum. Mr. Levo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I would like to say thank you to Ms. Verbata and the staff at Eastford Road School for their Memorial Day celebration and their invitation to be their guest speaker. It was awesome. It's my second year speaking at this event, and I am proud and honored to be called to the school to do so. It is awesome to see the amazement or the look in the eyes of the children as I walk in. And to see the patriotism there in the school, it is just awesome. Everybody was wearing red, white, and blue, and they sang the national anthem, and they said the Pledge of Allegiance, and it just echoed in that gymnasium. So thank you very much, and I look forward to next year. Hopefully I get to be there again. Next, I would like to say thank you to the Southbridge Middle High School Booster Club for their awards night and dinner. They put on a great awards night, and a lot of the athletes of our district were honored there, and a short or a small dinner followed. And it was a great turnout, and it was good to see a lot of the people, parents supporting their children that evening. So thank you again to the Athletic Booster Club for putting that on. Lastly, I would like to say, because I won't be here for the next couple of meetings, congrats to the class of 2015 for all your hard work in achieving the goal of graduation. Know that this is only the beginning of your life. Know that you are strong children, strong-minded children, and have endured a lot throughout this school district. You're destined for greatness. And I urge you to follow your destiny and become anything and everything that your mind or you set your heart to. And that's all I have. Pioneer pride.
Thank you. Anything else, Mrs. Congdon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one point that I just wanted to say. I know it keeps being inferred to that the intention of me wanting to do an expedited search was to put one candidate forward. That was not my intention at all. I just wanted a chance to vet any and all candidates. That's not who I am as a person, to try to put one candidate forward, and I'm sorry that that keeps being implied, but that's not who I am as a person. And again, I just wanted to vet any and all candidates that applied, not to specifically put one person through. So I wanted to clear that for the record. Second, I just wanted to congratulate all of the people that put together Southbridge Fest. I had that opportunity to attend, and it was nice to see the Southbridge Middle High School band in the parade. And I just wanted to thank everyone who put that wonderful event together. It was really a nice time seeing the community come together and watching our middle high school band march. Also, I wanted to thank those who came out to voice their opinions at the public forum. I know it's always difficult for people to get up and speak in public. And then I wanted to also congratulate the graduates who will be graduating on Friday. They've overcome a lot by the transition of much administration and staff, but they've still managed to remain focused and I commend you and wish you all the best of luck in your future endeavors. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Dr. Page?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. I would also like to congratulate the class of 2015 and wish you all of the best for your productive future. I also would like to thank Superintendent Stanton, Principal Earls, and chemistry teacher Mr. Giese for allowing me to come a couple of weeks ago, I think it was now, to the chemistry classes at the middle high school on one day and do a series of science demonstrations. Did a lot of really fun things, at least I thought they were fun, and the students seemed to think they were. With gas expansions, I had liquid nitrogen and dry ice and things, and a lot of interesting things you can do with that to hopefully reinforce some of the concepts that they're learning in school. And we also did some fun work with hydrogen balloon being combined with atmospheric oxygen to condense into water, and it's a really nice reaction that the students really seem to enjoy. I'm thankful for the opportunity to do that, and I've extended the same. I'd like to do a similar demonstration to the middle school students at some point, possibly in 8th grade in the context of their physical science courses. Probably won't do as much theory at that point, but anyway, it could be fun. So I wanted to thank everybody for allowing me to do that. Also the Southbridge Fest was a good time, and I would like to encourage the football coach to try and get a quarterback that can actually hit somebody in the face with a pie, and don't be beat by a town councilor. Thank you very much.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now that the public hearing on the restructuring of the middle high school is passed, and our subsequent votes tonight on the restructuring have been recorded, there's something that has bothered me, and I feel I must express it. During the hearing on May 26th, one of the members of the Southbridge Town Council provided real-time updates on his Facebook page. Now, of course, it's certainly impossible to quote directly all the words someone might say, and no one would expect that. But in identifying citizens who stood at the microphone, the counselor either used their names or description of positions they hold, have held, or hope to regain in the community. Of one rather nervous citizen who spoke at the hearing, the counselor wrote, "Pajama-clad mom says child will soon enter middle school, supports restructuring after hearing secondhand about horrors. Only second of 12 speakers to support restructuring plan thus far." Well, Madam Chair, I have to wonder if some who were in favor of the restructuring plan may have stayed away out of fear of being ridiculed and marginalized by others in attendance in this politically charged hot-button issue climate. The remark on Facebook by a sitting counselor certainly serves to justify such fears. Now, I don't presume to know what the counselor had in mind when he wrote that, and though it still appears on his Twitter site, it has since been removed from Facebook, perhaps on further reflection. It can be construed as a demeaning stereotype, as I took it to be, and I just needed to express my thoughts on this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mrs. Quinney?
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the last meeting, I did not discuss the interest-based bargaining agreement that we came to or the process, and so I wanted to let the community know about that. So interest-based bargaining took place. The team here consisted of myself, Mr. Abrahamson, and Kara Donovan. SEA members were Maria Murray, Brian Gentili, Tracy Lamson, and Darcy Pratt. Non-voting members that participated were Cheryl Stanton and Aaron Osborne, and it was facilitated by Tim Fitzgerald. So IBB is a different way of bargaining, and it's not standard collective bargaining. You put forth interests, concerns, issues, challenges, and then collaboratively work to find solutions to address those issues, challenges, and I guess that's it. To solve the problems of the district in a way that is agreeable to both sides. I found it to be very productive. This was the first time I had participated in interest-based bargaining, and I thought the process was wonderful, and it was solution-oriented. It wasn't side-oriented and interest-oriented. It was all in the best interests of the kids and how to come up with solutions for the challenges that we knew existed. We did a thorough look at the contract and pulled out a bunch of different things. I'm just going to highlight some things that were accomplished through this process that is in the MOA that we voted to approve. One of the issues that has been a challenge is in the past, people have retired in the middle of the school year or the beginning of the school year and not finished out the year. And in order to keep people consistently in front of children throughout the year, we instituted a bonus, retirement bonus, in order to encourage people to stay on. Paying for permanent subs would significantly outweigh the cost of that to us. We also asked that as a professional courtesy of a highly qualified teacher, anyone not taking advantage would give the school 30 days notice of their intent to retire, which has not been the case in the past. We discussed and set up an equitable system at the middle high school regarding the number of courses that teachers have to prepare for, which are known as preps, which I initially thought were like prep periods, that people had like 3 prep periods. Not at all the case. Preps are the courses that you would have to teach. So if you were, say, a math teacher, and these are not accurate for the record, teaching algebra, geometry, trigonometry, and calculus, that's an extraordinary amount, as opposed to if, say, again, these are not accurate, you were teaching 4 classes of freshman English, the amount you would have to prepare would be different, and there was some inequity among that. So we set forward that would be equitable, and teachers are not required to prepare for more than 3 different courses. And given the staffing, that shouldn't be an issue. That should get all of the classes covered and taught by the teachers that are required to do so. We also instituted through this a help sessions after school at the elementary schools and at the middle high school, which has not been the case in the past. That's not such a highlight. We added adoption to family leave as opposed to just the birth of a child. A sick bank has been added that the association is going to facilitate on their own. And so that's if someone has an illness, members can choose to donate sick days to people in order to help them in a time of medical crisis. In order to, again, keep a consistent teacher in classrooms, if a person leaves for childbearing leave, they can request parenting or childbearing leave if they leave in the middle of the year if more than 90 days are remaining in the school year, that parenting leave will not exceed the remainder of that school year. And then if there are fewer than 90 days, the teacher may take the year and potentially, if they wanted to, an additional full year. But nobody with child rearing leave will be able to come in the middle of the school year. It'll be the beginning of the school year is the plan. So if you go out in the halfway through and you only want to take half off, great, but nobody's going to be returning halfway, so we don't have to put in place subs in anticipation of that. Sick leave, sick days, personal days. We've established a direct deposit system, which all staff members are going to be required to participate in order to cut down on challenges, different ways to engage and challenge kids' learning. So we've set up a system in which there will be clubs, more clubs than the drama, band, and chorus at the elementary school level. So if kids have interest and there are other things offered, that they can participate in those as well. And now I really think that's everything. So I think it was a great process. I'd like to thank all the SEA members as well as the school committee members who participate. I think it was a excellent, respectful exchange of a united group of people working in the best interest of students and improving the educational system, and looking at the challenges that face the district and really working collaboratively in a very thoughtful and thought-provoking way in order to meet those challenges. And I want to thank, again, Marie, Brian Gentili, Tracy Lamson, Darcy Pratt, and Mr. Abrahamson, Ms. Stanton, Mr. Osborne, who's not here, and Ms. Donovan. I think this proved to be very productive, and I hope that this is how our union and school committee move forward in I think it was a trust-building exercise, and I hope that we've started to garner that trust in our united vision for the district and doing things in the best interest of students. So thank you all again. And on a different note, I participated in the PTA Reach Out and Read again, an excellent event that I think people that have the opportunity to read should. I think it gives a message to kids when you come in that reading is important. Somebody special is coming in to do this for them, and I think seeing the kids and how attentive they are in listening and wanting to learn and being so engaged is a tremendous gift that if you're only able to be in the classes for 1 hour, one time a year, I would recommend that that be your first hour, because once you're there, I think seeing all the good things that are going on is a tremendous gift. So I thank you to the PTA for yet again an excellent Reach Out and Read Day and event, and I believe that is all. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
I had a couple of things.
Oh, I'm sorry,
That's
Mrs.
okay.
Donovan.
Thank you. I'll make them quick. One thing that we weren't able to discuss last time was I really wanted to thank the Southbridge Middle High School Jazz Band. They were here at our last meeting with Dr. Garcia, and they're just an extraordinary, talented group of musicians and young professionals, and they did an extraordinary job, and I wish I could have said something at that time, so I apologize for the delay, but please know that you all should be very proud of yourselves, and to Dr. Garcia for the amazing work that you do with those kids. I also wanted to thank the administrators and the leaders of Aspira who were able to provide a New York City field trip to kids at the Southbridge Middle High School last Friday. They were able to go to Liberty Island and walk around the Statue of Liberty, visit the Hard Rock Cafe, spend time in Times Square, and really get a feel for what urban life is like as opposed to being in small-town Southbridge. And I had the opportunity to talk to a lot of kids who went, and it was just a fantastic experience for them. So if you had a part of making that happen for our kids, I wanted to thank you for that. And finally, like everybody, I'd like to congratulate the class of 2015. I will be present at the Senior Awards night tomorrow night, as well as graduation on Friday, but I would like to take this opportunity to extend my sincere congratulations and wish you all the very best in your future. Thank you.
Also, I would like to congratulate the class of 2015. We're hoping for no rain on Friday, so if we can collectively hope that there's no rain, that would be a good thing. I just wanted to say a couple of words to Superintendent Stanton. I realize that at times over the recent past that you have been spoken about and spoken to as if you are a non-entity and a non-human being. And I am very sorry about that. You are the first superintendent we have had who has attempted to try and resolve some long-standing problems, and it became highly politicized, and that is unfortunate. Your connections to a former employee of this district have made you a target. And I fear for your future. I think that is ridiculously unfair, the way you have been treated. I find it very undignified and disrespectful. I take ownership of that, in that what should have happened when we took the vote to appoint and extend you is giving you the courtesy of a public interview so that people could have known a little bit about you and who you are. And I want to publicly apologize to you for that. Again, we have a superintendent who, the first superintendent I've worked under, actually looked at what was going on and came up with a plan to address it. People can assign motives. People can assign all sorts of things to Ms. Stanton's actions. I do believe you have the best interests of this district at heart. And I know the vote of this committee tonight has made your job harder. And I would hope that moving forward, the new school committee, current school committee, the public, the town council, the town manager would give you the respect that you deserve as a human being and that you deserve in this position as superintendent of schools. That's it. I'm sorry. There's going to be no executive session this evening, so we'll make a motion to adjourn. Oh, everybody jumped in. I don't even know who said it. Right, everybody?
Chris, Brent.
Yeah. Show of hands, please. Thank you.